How's that for a topper?
The proceeding.
How's that for a topper?
I'm in Max. You are listening to Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. I'm in Max. Pursuing the RPG hobby with reckless abandon.
Why, hello, and well, and we have a small screen. I wonder why our screen is so small. Maybe it's because there's only two of us.
Yeah. No, I got a big screen. Well,
Oh wait, I resized the screen. Did I just fuck it up? Did I fix it? Yeah,
old men in tech. Look
I
at
pretty
this.
much fixed it. It's like
my screen.
But I resized the window and it resized it in OBS. I'm like, what the fuck? All right. Anyway, hi.
There's settings in this that I never use, and every now and again I click on something. Oops.
Thank you for joining us for season 28, episode 3 of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
I'm Stork.
In this episode, we're going to discuss science fiction settings, and then Taylor from Virginia writes in with a play-yourself success story. That's the one we bumped from last week. And Mike in PA writes in about writing a good game pitch. But first, if you'd like to email us, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. We're on the social meteors. We're on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and MeWe. HappyJacksRPG, all one word. Also, I'll talk a little bit about it because I got back on Reddit in the last couple days. I don't know if you've been following the news about Reddit there, Storkus.
Yep.
There's a Happy Jacks Reddit. Did you know that?
No, I did not.
Tyler started it long time ago, and he finally made me an admin on it. So r/HappyJacks. So if you want to go into the Reddit and bitch about us, because that's pretty much what people do on Reddit, you can go complain.
No, I don't need to read more bad press about me.
I'll tell you. I'll tell you what everyone says about you. But and also we do the show live at 7 p.m. Pacific time. Go to happyjacks.org/live, and you can see us on the YouTubers and on the Twitches. And I think that's it. Oh, so of course you know the reason I went to Reddit is because I wanted to join Wall Street Bets.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, you
Because that's not Robinhood. No, Robinhood is an app that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's some shady stuff. Although I will say I have a Schwab account, and I went into my Schwab account. And it's like on the day the news like really broke big, because I'd been hearing about it for a couple of days because there's a couple of podcasts I listened to that had mentioned it. And by the way, we're talking about the GameStop stock.
Right, an AMC.
It's basically a grassroots pump and dump. So instead of the experts on CNBC or Fox Business News or Bloomberg doing a pump and dump, it's just a bunch of ordinary people on the internet who got together and decided to do their own. And
it's raising some interesting questions, and it's ruffled a bunch of feathers.
I'm glad it's ruffled a bunch of feathers. But so I went in and I was able to get into the group. And I guess they also had a Discord that they got kicked off of and I don't know who all of these people are, but there might be some shady people in there. I don't know, but basically they ended up doing a margin squeeze. I don't know if it was intentional or not. The thread on that subreddit is so huge, and I'm not going to sit there and sift through all of it to try to figure out what their motives were. But they ended up either intentionally or unintentionally putting a margin squeeze. You know what a margin squeeze is? Mm-hmm. They put a margin squeeze on the guy who owns Merlin Capital, and by the time they were done, because his margin call already happened apparently.
What's Merlin Capital?
It's a hedge fund.
Okay.
It's an investment firm, but it's a hedge fund. So a lot of shorts. And by the time they were done, because they pumped that stock from $2.55. Well, I don't know when they started, but the 52-week low was like $2.55, somewhere around there. And they pumped it up into the $600 area.
Oh, I know.
Right?
A bunch of hedge funders were like counting on it getting so low, and they were,
and
basically betting.
This guy's margin call happened when this thing was up in the stratosphere at $500 a share or something. So he ended up having to take a like 12 or 13 billion dollar bath on this. Lost everything. Completely lost everything. And between yesterday and today, I myself made $800 on GameStop stock.
Did you sell it?
Of course I sold it.
Right.
I bought
$800
two shares.
You didn't have before.
I bought 2 shares at under $200. I'm like, I'll say goodbye to that. And that was yesterday, 20 minutes before close. And then this morning, forgot all about it. I got up this morning, I'm like, and I checked my Schwab account, and it's like, oh, those 2 shares are now, and I bought them for less than $400, and now suddenly they're worth almost $700. So I sold those, and then I started thinking, if I put some real money in this.
See, that's where they get you.
But I did, but I wasn't paying attention to the clock.
Uh-oh.
So I'm like, yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll place an order. And I ended up buying, and this is it. At this point, it's going like this all day long because it's a fight now between a bunch of people who are holding short positions who are trying to manipulate the price back down where it probably should be,
yes,
and a bunch of other people who love chaos.
Or people like you that are like just making a quick buck, They're like,
well, see that these people are holding on. These people are holding on to the stock because there's more margin calls coming up for some of these guys on this stock. They took one guy out.
Yeah,
I think they're trying to take out more. So I ended up buying. It was close to $300 a share. I think it was right at or just barely over that. And I bought $6,000 worth of it, and I'm like,
whoa.
But I'm going to watch this like a hawk, right? And then I'm like, well, when does the market close? I'm like, fuck, it closes in 15 minutes. Damn it! Refresh. Oh shit! It went up $20 a share. So
made it.
And that stuff I never do when investing, but it's so chaotic. It's like,
yeah.
There's a pretty good chance that I can come out with at least I can. It's
right?
bumping up and down so much. I can
so
at least
quickly.
get back to where to break even point.
So if you check it every 20 minutes. Or
I
something,
sold it.
Oh, well. No, that's what I'm saying. It's like you could probably make some quick cash, and that's why I'm thinking it's doing that. Is a bunch of people are doing exactly that and making.
They might, sure. I mean, it's the right now. This will all change on Monday, I'm sure. But right now. Well, up until market close, it was like the perfect day trader stock.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
literally just going like this all day long as people fight over this.
Or do they buy it, sell it, buy it just like you did? You could buy it for $200, sell it at $300, buy some more. When it dips back down below $300, sell again at $400. And you could through the course of a day probably make some significant cash.
Yeah.
But you got to watch it. Like you said, refresh every. And I actually knew a guy at work that's kind of what he did.
Oh, he's a day trader?
He would watch those things. And he was, it was sort of like gambling. It was just sort of like he'd make $20 here, he'd make $100 there, he'd lose $200. It was just sort of a thing to do. Just turn on his computer and play with his imaginary money.
And so I can now say, since it sounded like I was giving financial advice, I don't own any of those stonks anymore. I'm out of all of them. It killed me. The whole thing just killed me. Anyway, that's not why we're here.
No, it isn't. Well, but because of modern technology, it's like things that would have seemed so crazy in the past. The game Pit was all about stock trading.
Oh yes, commodity trading.
Right?
Yeah.
And they could only do that during a certain amount of time, and you had to be in there and dealing with a thing or on the phone with a dude. And nowadays, we can sit in our homes and just access the stuff.
Bobcat in the forum. It was no mere hedge fund.
Well played. That was going to be your T-shirt. It was no mere hedge
I am
fund.
no mere hedge fund.
Well played, Bob.
Oh,
Thank
my
you.
God.
Thank you for that.
All right. Science fiction settings. I was thinking about this because I've been watching Stargate. The Stargate, because there's been 3 series. I guess they made some movies. Well, there was the original film, but I guess they made a movie or Ark of Truth or I don't know, some other stuff. So I watched Atlantis, and I liked Atlantis. Atlantis was fun. And then I watched Stargate Universe, which is way darker. It's more like a combination of like Star Trek Voyager and Battlestar Galactica.
Battlestar Galactica is pretty bleak.
It's that bleak. It is
Yeah.
that bleak. It's these people who get. These people are going into this area because they figured out a way to use the Stargate to get to this what they hypothetical or theoretical ancient starship that's traveling automated around from galaxy to galaxy. But the people who are going aren't the people who they're going to eventually send onto the starship. But I can't remember what happened. But there was like explosions and people shooting, and so they all had to run in through the Stargate, and they all ended up being stranded on this ship, millions and millions of light years away from our galaxy, and it's really bleak and real dark, totally different tone from Atlantis. And now I've started on the original SG-1, and I'm at season 5 now.
It gets good in season 3. I think most shows that run a while like that get good at season 3. But
Yeah, it picked it. I watched the first couple of seasons, and I mean, it wasn't one of those shows where I'm like, oh, I can't miss this. Mm-hmm. But if it was on, I'd watch it because it's science fiction, and it wasn't bad.
A lot of the first series, and then maybe some of Atlantis, but I never really I never fully went down the rabbit hole.
It was, but it's been interesting. But watching that, and also the new
Expanse.
The new Expanse season is slowly rolling out. Might be finished. It might be all completely out by now. But I've been watching and consuming a lot of science fiction, and I'm thinking about like the sort of the assumptions that they make about science fiction, about and one of the. I mean, you could divide science fiction up in a lot of different ways.
A lot.
But one of the things that, at least theme-wise, that seems to be real common is what happens with people. Because we know what we're like, what human civilization is like now, and what's it going to be like hundreds of years from now, or thousands of years from now, or whatever, and what is going to be, Are we going to evolve? Is our society going to evolve and become, a more quote unquote enlightened society? That's sort of one way you could divide it, because you can look at things like certainly Star Trek Next Generation. That's a sort of an idealized, sort of utopic setting. You could make the same argument for Starship Troopers. Very different ideology behind it, but also it's more like a this is the way civilization or whatever will go. It may be more predictive than it is. What's the term I'm looking for? Aspirational. But I think that that there's a dividing line there between, do people become better or do they stay assholes? You know what I'm saying?
I do.
And
I do.
And you definitely, the other side of that is also some fine science fiction. Firefly, certainly. Mm-hmm. I mean, most people who are playing Traveller are probably making that similar assumption. Certainly, the Traveller setting, the Third Imperium, is not a utopic setting in any way.
No.
And I think, for role-playing games, I think the latter, the people aren't, or people or society, are kind of go hand in hand, aren't going to evolve into a better thing. It's just same fuckers, better technology. Basically, kind of the assumption on that side. You see what I'm saying?
I do. You're sort of, I don't want to say glossing over, but you're sort of oversimplifying, because I was thinking of Asimov's Foundation series, where humanity spread out to the stars, and then they just get isolated in these little pockets, and some sections are more advanced than others, and then they reconnect again, centuries later, and some have more technology, some have leftover technology, some have degressed, some have progressed. And I know the Anna Harrington universe kind of has the same thing going on as well, where each sort of galactic star system that's governed by individual, it's got its own governments, has its own technological advances compared to others. Mm-hmm. So sometimes even in these idealized sort of science fiction things, there's always sort of pockets of people that are more advanced. Even in Dune, there were pockets of people that were more advanced than others, and sometimes
but you're talking about technology, though. Are the people still just fuckers? That's what I'm talking about. Really, because and the whole reason I thought of this is I read an article because this is years ago. It was about did humans developing a civilization slow or stop our evolution? The obvious answer to that is no, because evolution happens on all kinds of different fronts and on all kinds of different scales. I mean, there's things happening right now, probably with coronavirus, that is putting pressure on the population as a whole, and it's might select out some. There might be some little antibody that works a certain way that might make it easier for you to die from it. Who knows? I mean, who knows? So there's all kinds of little fiddly things that are going on with evolution that don't have anything to do with our society. But I think that idea of will people evolve to the point where they will develop a better civilization or not? I mean, that's a big question, and I think that is a fundamental question most people ask when they're building a sort of a science fiction setting or a world. Because, I mean, Asimov Foundation very specifically was like, no, people aren't going to evolve to be able to build a better civilization. Civilizations are going to rise and fall like they've always done in the past. What we're going to do is build something else that's outside of civilization that will be able to ensure that we don't have to start with rocks and sticks when civilization collapses again. Right. That was the foundation, obviously.
Yeah, exactly.
And who was it that said this? Bobcat said, I don't think the foundation will hold up as written. It does not. I've read it recently, like within the last 2 years. It does not hold up. There's a lot of swooning female characters in that story. It's like, oh, it's all over the place. It was definitely a
product of its time,
of the 50s.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and Asimov, to his credit, maybe to his detriment, was unbelievably prolific. It's like he was cranking these things out left and right. And not just Foundation. He wrote, I don't want to go on record how many, but I'm going to say over 100 books.
Oh, I'm probably. He wrote because didn't he write textbooks and shit too?
He wrote all that, yeah.
He wrote all kinds of stuff. Good.
So I'm going to give him a pass because he's cranking these things out so quickly that he probably didn't have. And he was one of the first, writing long form hard sci-fi.
It was the 1950s.
Yes.
Yeah, I honestly don't know. I'll look it up.
You bring up an interesting point about people just being fuckers. I mean, other than 2001, can you think of a story where people become advanced and not advanced to a next phase of existence? That is, humans do, not encountering aliens that are more advanced. But is there I've never read one. I'm sure there's out there where people have advanced to a point where they're not just fuckers.
Well, it's Star Trek Next Generation. Which, one of the problems with that series, one of my problems with it, is the characters are so flawless, for the most part, it's fucking boring. Every source of conflict that happens has to come from outside. It has to come from other aliens, from some other society, or something like that. The only character that had flaws, which is a character they specifically made to make at least one person who wasn't perfect, was Howling Mad Murdoch, Barclay. They had to make a character with personal problems so they could have inner crew conflict, because otherwise they weren't really having any, unless an alien comes in and takes over someone's brain. So yeah, I would say Star Trek Next Generation, definitely.
But I don't see that as any different than the original formula either. I mean, that was the whole.
It changed with the times. I think it was still. I think the original series was probably as aspirational, but that aspiration sort of grew as the decades went on. But I think that one is certainly one where people have evolved to a higher point. I mean, one of the interesting...
Well, their society did, but I don't think they did. They still had their base instincts.
Sure.
They still made mistakes, but I don't see them as people that have evolved into another, a higher plane of existence.
No, not a higher plane of existence, but they've evolved the sort of violent, greedy, all of the things that are just very common were almost unheard of in the next generation. Oh, the sort of character flaws that you would have, that you would think of today. It wasn't just civilization that changed in Star Trek. It was the people.
I never really got that from there. I always figured them as being very regimented and very disciplined
Maybe.
as a product of their society.
It's
I
fascinating.
didn't see them as any better or different than...
I mean, and you're only seeing one tiny little segment of the Star Trek civilization, because you don't see enlisted men.
No.
Or enlisted persons.
Right.
And I'm assuming they're there unless everybody gets to be an officer. Maybe that's...
And you're an officer, and you're an officer.
Right.
And you're an officer.
Someone's mopping the floors. I mean, maybe they probably got robots for that. But I mean, someone's doing something that they don't want to do on that ship. I would think there's some guy who has to run around with wrenches and fix shit.
Well, that was always the engineers were in the Jeffrey tubes tweaking stuff, and then all
Right.
the ensigns were walking around with
There are also all the bodies flying out when there's a hull breach.
Right. What is it you're trying to get out of this?
Well, I'm
this
just
whole
thinking about
conversation?
what sort of assumptions do you make about a science fiction setting? And I think that that is a big assumption that ends up being made. Is human civilization going to be, because like when I ran the Exodus game, human civilization was no better than it was before.
Right.
It's just as fractured. People are still stabbing each other in the back, and it's just people are just fuckers. Mm-hmm. And then, and that is definitely not what, especially the later Star Trek is trying to convey. That's a totally different sort of. I'm picking on Star Trek. I should pick something else.
Well, it's kind of hard to, because
maybe
first of all,
maybe Babylon 5. No, not Babylon 5. They're fuckers too.
But see, I have a hard time with science fiction because it's so varied, and you can parse it into so many different things. From cyberpunks to post-apocalyptic to, I mean, even something like Arrival, where it's really just a modern day world, but like some fifth-dimensional creatures drop in and give us knowledge, right? Or even Close Encounters. That's a science fiction story, but it still takes place in a very mundane modern.
Well,
Earth.
I'm talking about science fiction settings.
Yeah,
is what I mean. But I mean, if you think about like the Uplift series, there again you've got. I think the Uplift actually is kind of playing almost. That series almost plays with this sort of assumption about what's going to happen with human society in the future, because. Are you familiar with the Uplift books?
I know the general concept. I haven't read them.
Just to sort of just a quick summary. Humans start experimenting with dolphins, chimpanzees, and gorillas, and try to basically make them sapient. And they succeed. Then they bump into this vast intergalactic civilization where uplifting, we're genetically modifying a pre-sapient species into a sapient species is a matter of course, and all of the species that exist in the galaxy, except for humans, were uplifted by a previous species. And there's a huge hierarchy of some extremely, spoilers, some extremely powerful civilizations that could squash us like ants. And the only thing that saved human civilization is the fact that there are... What spoilers on a 20-year-old book? There's the only thing that saved humanity is that all of these other great civilizations suddenly realized, oh wait, humanity already has uplifted 2 client species. that puts us as a certain status within this intergalactic society, even though a lot of them don't like it and will probably try to kill us all anyway. But it puts us in a very tenuous position because now we're suddenly a patron species, and we ourselves were never uplifted by anyone and never taught how to be good members and good citizens of the 5 galaxies that make up this massive civilization.
Who knows if we were uplifted? We don't know.
And there's some if you ever read the source book, Steve Jackson Games wrote a GURPS Uplift source book, and in that they talk about the fact, because I don't think this is ever mentioned in the books. I'd have to reread them to make sure, but there is they had I think they called them probationary people or something like that, and it's people who don't get the importance of what's going on and how dangerous the situation is, and decide to just basically act like the typical ugly American going to Europe on vacation. They lock them up. They put them away and hide them away from the aliens so they can't interact with them, because they want all the aliens to think, oh no, yeah, we're super evolved. Oh yeah, yep, you bet. We know exactly what's going on. Yeah, we're good.
Don't pay no attention to the.
Don't look at us or our camps of people who aren't thinking correctly. So, in a way, it kind of says, "Oh yeah, no, this is a society where we're not fuckers anymore." It's like, no, we're still fuckers. We're just hiding the fact that we're fuckers, which I thought was an interesting way to kind of play on that aspect of science fiction. One of the other things I was thinking about was like aliens. Mm-hmm. Because I mean, you get a plethora of different kinds of aliens in like Stargate. Obviously, it's a Planet of the Week show, so they go to the planet, and it's real cheap to make low tech stuff. Mm-hmm. So most of the planets they go to are lower tech, and there's some sort of flaw in the society and things like that, and but then back to Uplift or the David Brin series. We're at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to being technologically advanced compared to everyone else, and we're like millennia behind.
Yeah, I mean, yes, but I've also read stories where it's the opposite is true, where the humans
Right.
are the more advanced than they come in and behave like assholes because it's. I mean, if we're starting to look at science fiction tropes like that, I mean, I guess you could say that there's the trope where the humans are the most advanced, and they're the ones that come in and they're the gods, and then there's the ones where other people are the gods. Aliens come in and point out to humans how insignificant they really are. And sometimes it's a blending of the two. I mean, in one of the Star Trek movies, didn't the Vulcans come down and point out to us like we've had warp for centuries, and you guys just now discovered it?
They waited until they had warp in order to contact them. They
Right.
figured that was the thing that would make them. That was the point at which it was safe to contact them.
Very similar to Uplift in there. We're now in a different hierarchy, and we can now be trusted and contacted.
Well, see, the reason that humans stand out in Uplift is there is no species that wasn't uplifted except for the quote-unquote ancients, which is this species long, long ago of myth and legend that no one ever actually remembers, that uplifted the first original species that populated the galaxies. Humans were considered what they refer to as a wolfling species, as in they raised themselves. Mm-hmm. And there's a bunch of people or a bunch of other players in this thing who are like, no, that's not possible. Someone secretly uplifted them. We need to find who it is. First, we need to subjugate them, and then we need to find out who it is that uplifted them without having a proper contract or whatever the fuck they
there was
call
an
it.
obelisk that they found, and then it was on the moon. And then,
Now you're mixing stories.
I don't know. I love science fiction because of all the various possibilities that you can have. I mean, don't get me wrong. I read a lot of fantasy. In fact, that's most of what I read. But I know when I'm playing science fiction, there's so many possibilities. Like I said, you can still be playing on Earth and aliens come to visit, or interdimensional portal opens up and you fall in and so you're somewhere else. I mean, or you can be playing hard science fiction with no gravity, like
Oh, no fake
spaceship.
gravity. Yeah.
You could play.
They always tried
science fiction fantasy like Star Wars, where you have space Jedi and wizards. You can be playing a mixture of the two, like something like Traveler or stuff, where they just ships kind of have gravity and they sort of follow. It's a little squishy. Even like Firefly that way. It's like there's no way there'd be gravity on that ship. They'd all be floating around. It's not that big.
Right.
But all that being equal, there's so many stories you can tell in so many different ways in all of science fiction. I mean, it is so rife with possibilities as in a gaming. I mean, even a superhero game can be a science fiction game, or a science fiction game can be a superhero game.
Sure.
There's so many possibilities that you can.
That is a very blended. Those are two very blended genres.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I love it, but it can also be overwhelming sometimes when you're trying to play a hard science fiction game, and you're dealing with the tech and you're dealing with robots and you're dealing with faster than light travel and stuff. Sometimes the science of the science fiction gets in the way of your game.
Right.
So, it's kind of, sometimes it's a trade-off. Sometimes you end up like softening your hard science fiction just so that you can have a more fun game.
Oh, and I mean, I think that I know I would be willing. Well, I would be willing to bet that artificial gravity was invented by the people who wrote the original Star Trek, because it's like, how the hell are we going to have people hanging on wires the whole show? You know how expensive that's going to be?
Well, it was in Flash Gordon, too, They were all walking around in their spaceships.
I suppose. Well, yeah. But maybe did they know there's no gravity in space then? You're talking about that a long time ago.
It was like blue monkeys. When you fall off the ship, you fall down.
You go down. That's my favorite. My science fiction setting is my favorite science fiction setting. It was big blue monkeys from outer space. I loved it. Space has air, but it does get cold out by the outer planets, so bring a coat.
Right. It's just sort of, space is just this big empty that you keep falling. If you fall off, you fall forever. You fall down.
Well, you don't know where you go, but you go down. Right. You hit the bottom eventually. There's a bottom to space. And there's a top, maybe, too, but we don't know because it's hard to go up. It's hard to go up in space. Yeah, for those who don't know, that was my setting. That it was sort of kind of a steampunkish science fiction setting where there were these giant dirigibles with gondolas that they used for spaceships to go between the planets, and it was more of sort of a comedic setting, but space had an up and down. And there was also atmosphere, and they were literally going around in dirigibles with cannons shooting at each other, which I thought was awesome.
Sort of Jules Verne.
Yeah. All right. Play your self-success story from Taylor in Virginia. Hello, lovely podcast hosts. I wanted
to be talking about us.
No, he was probably not expecting it was going to be in me. I wanted to share a thank you for a tip I heard on the show years ago, as well as share the associated success story. Some years ago, you mentioned the idea of create yourself as a character in relation to a convention game idea. In the summer of 2019, one of my best friends was getting married. For the bachelor party I planned, we went to a cabin in the woods to hang out for the weekend. The groom-to-be is an RPG buddy of mine and asked me, as the best man, to run an RPG session on Saturday evening. I decided to steal the idea of make a character of yourself for this. We used D&D 5th edition for the game. The setup was simple. It's the day before your wedding. We just finished the rehearsal dinner, and the groom has gone missing. You, as the groomsman, must find the groom before tomorrow, and you all know better than to bother the bride-to-be about this. Also, inexplicably, everything becomes a fantasy world for the evening. Don't think about it too hard. Bill and I ran a game where everyone played themselves, and we were missing.
Really?
Yes. It was awesome, because we told them... I'll read his email first.
Okay.
It went so smoothly, the players in attendance ranged from zero RPG experience through occasional player up to regularly GM's other games. For each of them, there was immediate understanding and buy-in for what would happen. The veteran players helped the new ones draw up character sheets, just a little level 3 romp, and then everyone had a great time romping around the groom's home city, running into wacky improvised obstacles at places we thought the groom might have gone to. In short, if you're in need of a one-shot session involving too many players, we had 7 to 8, and a large range of RPG and acting experiences, I heartily recommend Make Yourself a Character to get over role-playing hurdles and hesitations. Taylor from Virginia.
That actually sounds like a lot of fun. It's like The Hangover. You're playing the Hangover game.
Kind of, yeah. The game Bill and I ran, we told everyone, make yourselves as a character and then show up at our house at X time.
Okay.
And
I've heard this story.
I'm sure I've told it. And we unlocked the back door, because everyone came through the back door of our apartment in Long Beach, because that's where the parking was. And then we shut off the circuit breakers to our apartment. And then Bill and I were upstairs, and we had drawn on the ground with something. I don't remember how we did it, with a string or something. We didn't actually draw on the carpet. But we drew like a pentagram, and there was some stuff around, and we're both sitting there like in a like a meditative position, and we're not unresponsive. And so the people came in. We could hear them coming in. And we're both like, and they're downstairs, and we had left like some clues around, and the stuff was disheveled and shit. I think like the couch was turned upside down and stuff like that. So people came in immediately. It looked like a crime scene, and they're like, I can't see anything. Should we go upstairs? I don't know. Let's look at. Look, I found this, and they found like notes and stuff, and then one of the clues is we wrote, and someone found it, and I don't remember who it was or how they figured it out, but we wrote with what did we use? It was
Sounds like a LARP.
Like chapstick or something backwards. Help us on the downstairs bathroom mirror. So if you turn the hot water on, it fogs up the mirror. Mm-hmm. The message would appear. And someone found that shit. And then they're like, the lights aren't on. Can someone find the circuit breaker? And then you hear all the lights come on and all this stuff. And then we had like a tape recorder that had a message that was backwards. It was like all kinds of shit. It was all kinds of stuff. And I don't even remember what the gist of it was, but we had been sucked into basically some sort of like, this was just the intro. We'd been sucked into some other dimension or something. And so everyone had to like go in and follow us and rescue us. Was basically what the adventure was.
Sounds like a LARP. I mean,
it started out like that, but then as soon as they got to the point where they would have gone into the portal that we had gone into, that's when we're like, okay, now we can go downstairs and just play the game. And then it became a tabletop game at that point.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Fully interactive. We did I think a Champions game where we were all making, idealized versions of Batman or whatever, and finally we're like, why don't we make ourselves so we had, I played myself, and I turned into, I think, Thor. It was a Thor art knockoff, and another guy did a Captain America knockoff, but it was him in our secret identities, and we played in Portland, where I grew up. So, and there's something kind of fun about playing in places that like you could go to your school.
Oh, yeah.
Where all the stores were. And it was like there was a shorthand. It was like, okay, we're down here. And so everybody's like, when you said you were at the cross section of First and A Street, they were like, oh, I know exactly where that is. So everybody knew what was there.
Right.
So like when you're having a superhero battle in your city on these corners, there was no like, well, what's there? Can I grab this? But then also just playing ourselves, which got a little abstract and a little weird because you don't really play yourself. You play games to escape from yourself. So you play an idealized version of yourself. Yeah.
We played another game where it was post-apocalyptic fantasy, and Brian ran it. And it originally started out as just him and me and Fred were the only two players, I think, when it originally started. And there might have been one other player, I don't remember. But we were... this weird apocalypse thing happened, and suddenly everyone's gone. All the stuff is there, but there's no people anymore. So we're driving around basically trying to find other people. And Brian and I got in a lot of fights about that. He's like, no, we need to go this and this and this. And I'm like, no, we need to go to this and this and this, because obviously pretty much every RPGer has in the back of their head, this is what I'm going to do when civilization ends. There's my dog.
I have a plan.
Right. It's like there's at least that little prepper amygdala in your brain. Stop. Oh my God.
I can hear them over here.
I know.
Howling away.
So, but yeah, doing that is fun. Now, we always did it in GURPS because GURPS is a very flexible system. Of course, the problem is when you start getting to your stats, like, you're not that strong, you're not that smart.
Yeah.
You're not that healthy.
You're that good looking, your charisma's not a 10. Yeah.
Right.
Anybody else here think his charisma's a 10? No, you're a 3, bro. What? Yeah. I think I made it. I bought Sims once, and I think I made myself as a Sim. And there's nothing more depressing than watching yourself die a miserable, lonely existence as a Sim in the Sim universe. Yeah, don't do that. You get at some point you're tempted to, I'll just make myself, and so you do, and you kind of, figure out the stuff that you think you are, and then you're like, this dude is lame.
Oh yeah, Eric Odd brought a point that hits too close to home when you're playing when people in the group have kids. I probably wouldn't even do it today because, I mean, this is what you did when you were young and single. Because it's like, yeah, if I'm playing myself and, like, the world just ended, what are you going to do? Go find my fucking kids.
Yeah.
That's it. And then once I find them, find some place to hide until they're adults and I'm dead.
Yeah, my plan is to take over a ocean liner, like a Princess Ocean Cruiser or whatever, and then just because it makes its own water, they've got plenty of food, they've got medical facilities, and yeah, it's a big floating city.
Right.
So like when the zombie apocalypse happens, I just get on there and go 3 miles out and just wait it out. Perfect.
Unless, well, even if the zombies can go in the water, they're going to go underneath the boat. They're not going to be able to get to the boat. They can't swim.
Yeah.
You might have some floaters though. There might be some that are like.
But they'll get eaten. They'll get eaten by the fish.
They swell up from the gases and boop, 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 like buoys.
You can't get on a ship unless you drop the anchor and they climb up the chain, but there's no way to get onto a ship.
I guess not. I don't know.
Anyway.
I don't know. You got to worry about Zolfins.
Well, I've talked about this before. I've actually have a whole movie written out called Zolfin.
Right. All right. Thank you, Taylor. And I'm glad that I don't know if it was a con game we were talking about, but we used to do that when I was in college and in the years afterwards all the time.
This sounds awfully close to your story, so it's not mine where we had played ourselves as superheroes. It must be yours where you're.
Well, in the post-apocalyptic thing, when the apocalypse thing that actually happened to us, we got transported way far into the future, and he'd turned the post-apocalyptic Earth into a fantasy setting. And I was a mage, and a bad one.
When you say bad, you mean bad good, or you mean?
I mean bad incompetent.
Bad evil.
No, bad incompetent.
Ah, no, that sounds like you. Yeah.
I'll get it figured out. Just leave me alone.
You weren't. Back off! I've got this.
I can do it.
You weren't a bard? That's funny.
No, I wasn't a bard. No, I was a mage. I was an earth mage. I eventually learned stone missile, and I could just kick the shit out of people. They had us. Brian had us reprise the characters. Me and Bill went up and visited him when he lived over in Lawndale, and I think it was Lawndale, and he said, "Oh, well, give yourself each 50 XP or something because it's been 10 years." So I'm like, "I'll buy up all my spells. I'm not going to be a shitty mage anymore." That was a fun game because one of the players had a character who did not believe that magic was real. It was illusions.
Funny.
It was tricks. It's like stage tricks.
Yeah.
So.
Come on.
All right. Writing a good game pitch from Mike and Paul, Pennsylvania.
Hi, Stu and crew. You mentioned you were low on emails in recent episode, season 27, episode 20, perhaps. So here's something I've been ruminating on.
And we are still low on emails.
Yep. How do you write a good game pitch? What do you say to entice a handful of players, in my case friends, but could be for the friendly local gaming store bulletin board crowd, future con signups, etc., into making characters for the game that you want to play or GM for? What sorts of things do you say to set up expectations, to mold the fun a bit, to avoid the ninja in a Wild West scenario? You cannot play a ninja. Is that song still around? You need to play that song. Perhaps you want to pitch.
The following podcast may contain foul language,
hold on.
offensive humor.
That's not it. Which one is it? Oh, here.
May I have your attention, please? You are listening to Happy Jack's RPG podcast. The following show may be explicit. I said no, you can't play a ninja. This is an Old West game, and they didn't have ninjas.
That song? Yeah, I still got it.
Yes. I'm glad. We need to play that just for some context. Perhaps you want to pitch.
But the year is 1865, and historical records indicate there were definitely ninjas in fucking Japan.
That's my favorite part. It's fucking Japan.
Yeah, I bust myself up sometimes. Sorry, go ahead.
That's my favorite line of that whole song. Maybe we should play it at the end, so those people who are new, who've never heard it, can hear it. So where is it? But mold a bit of fun in a Ninja in the Wild West scenario. Perhaps you want to pitch an uncommon, dirty hippie game or OSR, etc. system to the D&D 5e, otherwise diehards. Keeping this broad, the game in question could be for a one-shot session, a short several-session adventure, or even an epic years-long campaign. Mostly I've been thinking about tossing my hat in the GM ring for a short adventure while friends are feeling burnt out or uninspired in their games. Distance gaming is rough. Yes, it is. Thoughts, opinions, arguments. Wishing you all the best. Stay safe and game on. And at appropriate distance, that is outside of melee range. Mike in Pennsylvania. What was the question?
How to write a game pitch to your group? I have thoughts.
Okay, go ahead.
When I was when I worked for a defense contractor, McDonnell Douglas, back in the 90s, and at one point they decided for some reason to send me to this very expensive proposal writing thing for a week in Utah, and that's where I learned how weird the people in Utah deal with alcohol. It's bizarre. Anyway, it has nothing to do with the story. So they actually sent me to this high-end seminar on how to write proposals for government contracts, specifically what it was.
That's really cool.
Yeah. And I can tell you one of the problems you're going to have if you want to play a dirty hippie game and you're playing with D&D 5e diehards, that's going to be a tough sell. You have to come up with the things they like that intersect with the game you want them to play. And if there aren't any, you're going to have to make them up. Because otherwise, I don't know how you're going to do it. But, I mean, OSR, much easier. Hey, yeah, we've been playing D&D 5e. How would you guys like to play the game based on the original D&D? Just out of nostalgia's sake and curiosity, if you're dealing with people who aren't like, typical grognards, they're like, oh, that'd be kind of fun. I wouldn't mind doing that. So you could probably easily get them in to do that. Just go on the nostalgia side, on the nostalgia track. That'd probably get them to at least do it. Plus, you can say things like, you already know the game mechanics because it's D20, although it's probably going to be THACO or pre-THACO rather than what they have now. But a lot of the tropes will be familiar. What will be different is the sort of the more technical part of the dungeon crawl will be more of the measuring and all of that kind of stuff. So I mean, that would be an easier sell. I mean, if you've got players who don't like if you've got players who don't like all of the little fiddly parts of 5e. Like, I mean, you can have feats in 5e, and I don't think it's quite as breaky as 4th edition or 3.5 were, but I mean, it can get crunchy.
Complicated.
Complicated. Then if you're trying to say for like a PBTA game, hey, I have this game. It's very rules light, very narrative. And for the play, you doing that, it's more of a kind of a divide and conquer thing. You're going to try to target the players who don't like this thing about D&D and see if maybe this is an alternative. Maybe they might be willing to try this thing as an alternative.
It's interesting to me. So you're actively just trying to sell them on the system.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would actually try to sell the story first, and then I would shove the system down their throat. I would say something like, "It's going to be Harry Potter meets the X-Men. It's going to be really, really cool, and we're going to play it in Savage Worlds. It's going to be fun. You guys will pick it up great, but it's going to be, and try to." And so the elevator pitch would be about the sort of an outline of the story,
right?
And then hopefully that would entice them to put down their D20s and THAC0 and pick up,
I would say even in that situation, my advice is still relevant because you're going to want to tailor that to their interests.
Yes.
Like if these people absolutely fucking hate Harry Potter and you say it's Harry Potter meets X-Men, you're not going to say that. You're going to say it's Harry Dresden meets X-Men, or it's
yes.
My Little Pony Friendship is Magic meets X-Men. Right? You're going to avoid the thing that they hate, and that's basically what you got to target it to the people that you're trying to pitch it to. I mean, this isn't an elevator pitch where it's like, this is I've made a game and I need to have a 3-sentence thing that I say to people if they ask me what my game's about. This is, you have a target audience here, so since you know who your target audience is, use that to your advantage and try to figure out what it is they're going to like out of that system or out of that setting or out of that game, that story premise. And tailor it like that.
Still make it an elevator pitch though as well. I still think that you can, to further entice them, make it a really quick synopsis of what you have planned, so that they have more impetus perhaps to take the leap of faith and try another system. It's like, I have this really cool thing, but I want to make it realistic, so I really want to run it in GURPS. And here's the outline. Here's what I have in mind. What do you guys think? So they're like, wow, if we're going to be playing snipers, and we're actually, okay, all right, I'll I hate GURPS, but I'll try it, or something like that, because you want to try to as many carrots in the basket for those donkeys to follow than just trying to say, hey, I'm tired of playing D&D, so we're going to play OSR. Or I guess you have to decide to yourself why it is you want to try a different system, and why the game that you're doing needs to be in a different system for these people, and then try to figure out if you want these people to play and what it is that they want out of it. There's a lot of little nuances in there that you need to work out. And then once you do, sell it.
James V said, that's how I got my D&D only group to try other systems, selling them on the setting. Mm-hmm. They have now tried both Tales from the Loop and just started Judge Dredd. Sell the story the system can follow.
I agree. I totally agree. And something's like Judge Dredd and Tales from the Loop, their world setting is so interesting that in order to experience it, you have to take the system to go with it. You have to play their system in it. And that's a no-brainer, but it's really cool. You show them the artwork from Tales of the Loop, and everybody's like, I want to do that, and they're in. Now you got them.
There you go. And that's all I have to say about that.
I think we could branch off a little bit in elevator pitches. I remember years ago there was a guy that had developed his own role-playing game at the cons, and he had his elevator pitch down. I think he actually gave it to you in an elevator, so it was actually pretty funny. And it's just something that's practiced, where you hit the high points of your gaming system or of your story, whatever it is, and that in and of itself is like there's seminars and classes taught about how to pitch a story or how to pitch it, because people have very short attention spans, and you need to make your pitch really quick and really interesting. And it's almost like a comedian, you need to hit certain beats, and you need to get it out really quickly and interesting. And even the way you tell it has to be done right. You sort of almost have to rehearse it.
But I mean, the whole idea of an elevator pitch is you are talking to someone who really doesn't hear what you have to say, and you're going to try to make it as compelling as you possibly can in the amount of time it takes them, like if you get stuck in an elevator with them, or if they're literally walking from the elevator to their car outside, and you have a 18 or 30 seconds in which to tell them what you're going to.
And people now with their short attention span, I think it's still good advice.
Oh, it is.
If you want them to switch it, you got to come up with I guess what I'm saying is come up with a really concise explanation as to why you want to do this thing, because you're going to lose them after a minute of talking.
Oh yeah, and if it gets too complicated, like if you're going after a setting, it has to be concise, because if it starts turning into a minute or 2 minute long explanation, they're going to say, okay, wait a second, how much fucking history about this world am I going to have to read to play this game?
Well, and that's the other thing. If you're going to just send it to them in text, like, here's what I want, it's like and drop
it needs to be a
document
tweet
on them.
You're
going to get a TLDR, yeah.
It needs to be a tweet.
Yeah, and you need to, but you still need to make it interesting. You know, there's an art to it for sure. I think practice what you're going to say to your group before you do. Because if you just get up there and ramble, they're going to be like, they're going to start looking at their phones.
Right.
You know,
and target their interests. Target the
Absolutely.
shit they like. I mean, if you want to play, let's say you just like, oh fuck, I hate D&D, I want to play a PBTA game. Is there someone in there who really likes superheroes? Maybe you're going to go with masks or something like that, or if there's something if someone's a big fan of something, because if you can divide and conquer, if you can get one person, one of your group of 3 or 4 players on your side immediately when you say, oh, I want to run this game and it's going to be like this series of books, and that person will be like, oh, I'm in. Suddenly now you've got 2 cheerleaders rather than 1.
And Stu's a perfect example of this. For a while he was running, I was going to say at your peak you were running 5 games at a time.
I don't think I've
and
ever
a lot of them
run
were
5
different
at a time.
systems.
Oh, I think 3 was the most I ran.
Okay, and a lot of them were different systems and different groups. I think I was in 2, but you had targeted groups that had specific interests. You know, there were people that wanted to play a vampire game, and there were other people that didn't want to play a vampire game, so they played in another game.
Right.
And so you were juggling all these different games. But again, it boiled down to who was more interested in playing what system and what genre than others. And again, you know, if all your D&D buddies, if 4 out of the 5 are willing to make the jump to GURPS, that's fine, and the other one doesn't, that's fine. 4 is plenty for GURPS games. So,
and chances are that the one person left out is going to play anyway. They'll just complain about it.
yeah. I hate GURPS.
I hate stupid.
Yeah, I remember when we played first time when we were playing when we switched from D&D 4th edition to Hero to GURPS. Tyler is like, fucking hate systems that have defense rolls. It's like, I should hit. I should be able to roll damage. Like, no, that's not the way it works. It's too easy to hit in this game.
Yeah, I know. and if you do get hit, you don't want to get hit either.
No, you don't. All right. Yeah, we can call it there. All right.
Yeah, we started early.
Thank you for joining us for season 28, episode 3 of Happy Jacks RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
I'm Stork.
And we'll see you next week, 7 p.m. Pacific time, happyjacks.org/live. Please join us then. And until then, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. I'll play the ninja intro as the outro. You'll like it. Maybe. Yeah. It's stupid.
Well, there might be people out there that haven't heard it before.
That's true.
It's been a long time since you played it.
All right.
Are those songs still available, by the way?
That one I'd never released. But I could re-record it and release it as an actual song. You can find a lot of my stuff, Angry Folk Band on Bandcamp. If you go to Bandcamp, most of it's up there now. So that's it.
Your attention, please. You are listening to Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. The following show may be explicit. I said no, you can't play a ninja. This is an Old West game, and they didn't have ninjas.
But the year is 1869, and there are historical records indicating there were ninjas.
In fucking Japan, not in the Old West. I said no.
You're already railroading me. You're already railroading
This
me.
is an Old
You're
West
already
game, and they
railroading
didn't have
me
ninjas.
now.
Why do you
It's just like the last
always
game.
have to play oddball?
It's just like the last
Can play
game.
nothing normal.
Where you wouldn't let me play a Nazi, I had to play you.
The preceding program has been a presentation of the Angry Folk Media Empire.